Hello. Tonight, I want to tell you a quiet story. It's about a small village, a deadly disease, and the choices that changed everything. Let's go back to the 1600s. The year is 1665. The place is Am, a peaceful, remote village in the hills of Derbyshire, England. Life was simple here. People farmed. They raised sheep. They baked bread. They went to church. Time passed slowly. Then one day, something arrived in a bundle of cloth. A tailor had ordered cloth from London, but this cloth carried something more than thread. It carried fleas. Fleas that were infected with a terrible sickness, the plague. Soon after the cloth was opened, people in the tailor's household began to feel strange. Fever, pain, then black swellings, and soon, death. At first, the village was confused. They didn't know what it was, but the sickness spread quickly. People died within days. Fear grew. Now, here is the strange part. Instead of fleeing, instead of running to other towns, the people of Am made a decision. A hard decision. They chose to quarantine themselves. Yes, the whole village agreed. No one would leave, and no one would enter. They built boundary stones around the village. They carved holes in them, where people from outside could drop food and coins. The coins were soaked in vinegar. They believed vinegar could kill the plague. No doctors came. No help arrived. But still, they stayed. For 14 long months, the village of Am was cut off from the world. People kept to themselves. They prayed. They waited. In one cottage, a whole family died, except one small girl. In another, a woman buried her husband, her children, and kept going. Out of 350 villagers, 260 died. But the plague did not spread beyond the village. Their sacrifice protected the towns and villages around them. Historians still wonder, how did some people survive? Was it chance? Or did they have natural resistance? Their blood, their habits, their faith. Some say certain people had a genetic mutation that protected them. Others think it was where they lived, far from others, up in the hills, with clean air and isolation. But no one knows for sure. Now, imagine this. You live in that village. You've just heard the news. A sickness is spreading. People are dying quickly. You're afraid. But the village votes. They decide to stay. Would you have stayed? Would you have risked your life to protect strangers in other towns? Would you survive? Would your house be empty after a week? Or would you be one of the few who made it to the end, walking outside after the final case, breathing the cold morning air, hearing silence? Would you survive the village that beat the Black Death? We'll never really know. But tonight, it's enough to think about a small village, long ago, that chose bravery over panic, that chose others over itself. A quiet place, full of quiet people who made a very loud decision. Good night. Inside the village, time became strange. Days blended together. People rarely opened their doors. Conversations became whispers through walls, or looks exchanged from windows. The priest, Reverend William Mompesson, continued his work. He walked the village alone. He left letters at doorsteps. He led prayers from a distance. He too had a family. And yet, he stayed. They say he convinced the village not to flee, not through force, but through faith and reason. If they left, the plague would follow. So they stayed, knowing what that meant. For many, it meant death. In some homes, people tended to the sick, knowing they would likely fall ill next. In others, the healthy watched loved ones slip away, powerless to help, unable to touch. There was no cure, no hope, just the will to endure. And yet, not everyone gave in to fear. Some villagers brought food to the sick, quietly, bravely. Others rang bells to mark a passing, hoping someone would hear and remember. The village became a quiet place of invisible courage. There were no grand speeches, no heroes in shining armor, just ordinary people doing something extraordinary, staying still. As the weeks turned into months, the air grew colder. Winter came, then spring. Still, the quarantine held. No one crossed the boundary stones. They had built a wall with their will alone, a wall of silence. Eventually, the sickness began to slow. There were fewer new graves. The coughing stopped echoing through the hills. One day, no one died. Then another, and another. The worst had passed. Those who were left alive didn't cheer. They didn't celebrate. They just breathed, slowly, carefully, as if they were afraid the air might still be dangerous. The boundary stones stayed in place for a little while longer, just to be sure. The coins and vinegar stopped appearing. Visitors returned, curious. Some brought letters. Some brought food. Some just came to see the place where people chose to stay. The church reopened, but rows of seats were now empty. The choir was smaller, the hymns quieter. And yet, life returned. The grass grew back over forgotten paths. The sheep wandered again across the hills. Children, The few who remained began to play. Am had survived, not untouched, but unbroken. Their story was almost lost to time. No paintings, no books for many years, just memories passed down in hushed voices. A village that made a choice and held it. A quiet, hidden act of sacrifice that changed history. And now, as you lie still and listen, maybe you feel a little closer to them, not because you've lived their pain, but because you can understand their strength. Let your eyes grow heavy. Let your breath slow. Somewhere far away in the hills, a bell once rang. It rang for the last time, and then the silence meant peace. Sleep well. The village is quiet now. Aldenmore was a village wrapped in perpetual mist, a place where the world moved slowly, and time seemed to bend around its ancient cobblestone streets. At the edge of the village, near a leaning oak and a crumbling stone marker, lived an old man who had only one purpose: to light the lanterns. Every evening, without fail, as the sun dipped behind the hills, and a quiet hush fell over the houses, he would emerge from his small cottage, with a lantern in one hand and a brass-tipped rod in the other. He walked without hurry, stopping at each post along the path, gently lighting the flames. His motions were smooth, practiced, as if he'd done this not just for years, but for centuries. The villagers rarely saw him by day. Some thought he slept, others believed he meditated, or simply waited for dusk to fall. Children would sometimes peer through the gaps in his old fence, hoping to catch a glimpse, but they never did. He remained a figure of the evening, part of the twilight, like the fog and the chill. The lanterns themselves were beautiful, tall iron structures with glass panels, their bases carved with unfamiliar symbols. Some said they had been there since before the village was built, and without fail, they always lit, even in rain or snow, their flames never faltering. Nobody remembered when the lantern keeper had started. He had always been there, as far as memory served. The elder said he had replaced someone before him, and they someone else before that. A line of keepers stretching so far back that the first was a mystery even to the oldest records. And so the village slept under his light, silent, safe, and forgotten by the wider world. Aldenmore glowed gently in the dark, like a dream preserved in glass. Somewhere, hidden among the rolling green hills of Europe, there is a village where time forgot to move forward. No clocks tick, no engines hum. People live just as they did centuries ago. And tonight, we'll walk together through its foggy paths. As you cross the mossy bridge, a cold, quiet breeze welcomes you. Stone cottages stand still in the mist. You hear nothing but the distant rustle of leaves. A candle flickers in a window, and it feels like you're being watched, or remembered. In this village, no one owns a mirror, not because they don't believe in vanity, but because they say, mirrors remember things too clearly. The villagers rise with the sun, not because they have to, but because the bell in the tower rings, though no one has pulled its rope in 100 years. Once a year, the wind brings voices, whispers from those who lived long before. The villagers don't fear them, they listen, and sometimes, they say, the wind answers back. There is a tree in the village square that never loses its leaves. No one knows why. A child once found an old letter, buried in the wall of her home. It was addressed to someone with her same name. The writing was neat, old ink faded, but readable. When the sky forgets to turn dark, and the night walks beside you, remember, we never left. The village has no calendars. They say time does not pass here, it only circles. You may come in young, and stay forever unchanged. And no one asks why. Because in this place, questions are heavier than silence. As you walk away from the village, you don't remember how long you were there. The air smells the same, but something in you has changed. The village will still be there waiting, and perhaps, it's already dreaming of your return. Sleep now. They say there is a well deep in the forest just beyond the village's edge. It's covered in ivy and stones, and no one remembers digging it. Yet it never dries, even during the driest summers. The villagers whisper that the water doesn't come from the earth, it comes from memory. Those who drink it sometimes remember things that never happened to them. Visions of distant wars, of loves they never lived, of names they never spoke. It's not fear that keeps them away, it's understanding. Some memories don't want to be found. Farther into the woods stands a house with no doors, only windows, all sealed shut. No one lives there, and no one dares to enter. The oldest woman in the village says her grandmother told her it was built by a man who wanted to trap time. He filled the rooms with clocks and journals, trying to measure every passing second. One day, he disappeared, not died, just faded. They